All right, let's jump right in. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are exploring the Great Library of Alexandria. Just the name alone conjures up these incredible images of towering columns, endless shelves of papyrus, and, well, the ultimate tragic loss of human knowledge. It is, without a doubt, history's most famous lost archive. But what if I told you that the story we all think we know, the one about a massive cataclysmic inferno, it's actually mostly a myth?
I mean, did one single fire really destroy ancient history? Take a second and let that sink in. We've all heard the legend, right? Julius Caesar rolls into town, things get completely out of hand, and boom, thousands of years of brilliant human progress just go up in smoke overnight. It's dramatic, it's highly cinematic, but it's not exactly the whole truth.
Which brings us to Section 1, the House of the Muses.
So, to understand how it actually ended, we first need to understand how it began. And the key here is the word museon. We often picture the Library of Alexandria as just this quiet, dusty building full of old scrolls. But it was actually part of a massive, vibrant research institution dedicated to the 9 goddesses of the arts, the Muses. Honestly, you should picture it less like a traditional library and much more like a modern, sprawling university campus, or heck, even a billionaire-funded think tank. I mean, the scholars here were given huge salaries, free lodging, communal dining, and, get this, total tax exemptions. They were completely freed from the burdens of everyday life just so they could think, invent, and discover. And man, discover they did. Their ambition was just absolutely off the charts. King Ptolemy II reportedly set a goal to collect 500,000 scrolls. Just think about that number for a second. 500,000 pieces of written work. The sheer staggering scale of that ambition in the ancient world is almost impossible to comprehend. They didn't just want a few good books. They literally wanted a repository of all human knowledge.
So you might be wondering, how exactly do you amass 500,000 scrolls centuries before the printing press? Well, their acquisition tactics were absolutely ruthless. The Ptolemaic book hunt was essentially state-sponsored piracy for nerds. Step 1, search every single ship that comes into the Alexandrian port. Step 2, confiscate any original books you find. Step 3, have official scribes furiously copy them, and then just give the owner the copy and keep the original for the library. No, seriously. And wait, it gets better. They actually borrowed Athens' priceless original manuscripts of famous plays, leaving a massive fortune of 15 talents of precious metal as a guarantee. And then they simply kept the originals, sent back beautiful copies, and basically told Athens to keep the deposit. I mean, they were relentless. Now let's dive into Section 2, an ancient think tank. Like I mentioned, it wasn't just a giant warehouse for papyrus. It was an ancient think tank that attracted the most brilliant, diverse minds of the entire Hellenistic world. You have Eratosthenes, who literally calculated the circumference of the Earth to an incredibly accurate degree, using just shadows and geometry. Then there's Herophilus, who mapped the human nervous system and is essentially the father of anatomy. And Ctesibius, he invented the hydraulis, which is a water-powered pipe organ. They were making mind-boggling breakthroughs in geography, medicine, engineering, all buzzing around this one academic paradise. But honestly, this next detail is where I totally geek out. Hipparchus and combinatorics. So the ancient writer Plutarch recorded a debate where Hipparchus proved there were exactly 103,049 intertwinings from 10 simple statements. For centuries, people just thought this was a random, completely made-up number. But in 1994, modern mathematicians realized that 103,049 is the exact solution to a complex equation known as the 10th Schroeder number. That means they were solving incredibly intricate math problems over 2 millennia before modern mathematics rediscovered them. It's just mind-blowing. All right, moving on to Section 3, the myth of the fire. Okay, so they were verified geniuses and they had literally all the books. What went wrong? It's time to address the elephant in the room. The myth tells us the library was destroyed overnight by Julius Caesar in 48 BC. It's a great, dramatic story for sure, but the reality? Well, the reality is far more tragic. The Great Library suffered a slow death by 1,000 cuts. It wasn't one massive inferno. It was a grueling decline fueled by budget cuts, political instability, and shifting priorities among the rulers. Just watch how this builds over the centuries. In 1450 BC, Ptolemy VIII literally purges intellectuals from Alexandria because they supported his political rival, scattering brilliant minds all across the Mediterranean. Then, yes, in 48 BC, Julius Caesar did accidentally start a fire at the docks during a siege, but modern historians believe that fire mostly destroyed some warehouses near the water, not the main library itself. The institution actually survived. But as we move into the Roman period, well, the funding dried up. By the 270s AD, the Emperor Aurelian destroyed the entire quarter of the city where the library stood during a war. And finally, in 391 AD, the daughter library at the Serapeum was demolished by a zealous mob. It took centuries of neglect, warfare, and apathy to finally extinguish the light of the Museion.
Let's look at Section 4, what we actually lost.
Which brings us to a rather sobering thought. Because when the library slowly vanished, the devastation wasn't just about losing physical papyrus scrolls. It was about losing the momentum of human progress. Yes, we lost priceless historical texts like Pythias's accounts of exploring northern Europe. We lost the foundational texts of Stoic philosophy from Chrysippus. We lost entire Greek epics that filled in the gaps of the Trojan War. But perhaps the absolute most heartbreaking loss was the scientific method itself. That crucial combination of theoretical knowledge with actual physical experiments basically stalled. Think about that for a second. We had brilliant minds figuring out the solar system and human anatomy, and then for over 1,000 years, that hands-on experimental science practically disappeared.
There's a saying that perfectly and solemnly summarizes the true culprit here. It was not a fire or an angry, zealous mob that destroyed the library, but the ignorant belief that knowledge is unnecessary and costly. It was bureaucratic neglect. It was apathy. It was literally a society deciding that funding research and protecting history just wasn't worth the budget anymore.
Now, let's turn to Section 5, the surviving legacy. Look, I know that's incredibly heavy, but let's lift the mood here because there's a truly incredible, uplifting twist to this whole story. Not everything was lost. The survival of ancient knowledge is this amazing, global, collaborative triumph. First, during the Roman era, professional scribes painstakingly copied and recopied many essential texts. Then, those texts were preserved, intensely studied, and beautifully translated during the Islamic Golden Age. Scholars in the Abbasid Caliphate recognized the immense value of this Greek knowledge, keeping it alive and expanding on it significantly. And finally, those preserved works were translated back into Latin and reintroduced to Europe via medieval monks, helping to spark the Renaissance. It was basically a centuries-long relay race of dedicated humans literally saving the intellectual foundation of our world. Which leaves us with one final, incredibly important question to ponder. If the greatest repository of human knowledge slowly faded due to neglect, budget cuts, and apathy, how secure is our digital data today? We store our entire lives, our history, and our science on servers that require constant maintenance and immense power. Are we truly immune to a slow fade of our own? It's definitely a provocative thought to leave you with. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions and never stop exploring.